tuning in to the online broadcast network, AfterBuzz TV. Over 20 million weekly downloads from over 200 countries and your number one source in after-show entertainment. AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing after shows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
Throwback.
Wow.
Echoes.
I love it.
Guys, thank you for tuning in. This is AfterBuzz TV's Creators and Showrunners, where we interview the creators and showrunners behind your favorite TV series on TV. I'm your host, Stephen Lemieux, and I'm joined here by an amazing and exceptional person in the TV industry. He has the mind behind such amazing shows such as White Collar, Graceland, and you gotta shout out. Go ahead and shout out McShasty.
Shasta McNasty, that's right.
There you go, Shasty McNasty.
Doobie-doobie-doo.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Jeff
Hey, thank
Eastin
you.
is our guest in the studio today.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and take my headphones off because
Okay.
after hearing the song, that was the only reason we had them on. So
I can take mine off too?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right. So, Jeff, you've had a very interesting career so far.
So
and
far,
It
yeah.
has a long way to go, especially when we have plans for Graceland to move further, several more seasons onward.
Knockwood, yeah.
And we also want to talk a little bit about White Collar and how
Right.
that's actually wrapping. It's probably a very bittersweet moment right now for you
It
guys.
is, yes.
But I first want to kind of get a background to who you are. So you graduated Colorado State for journalism, and you, just a shout out, you were a keynote speaker for their media festival last year.
I was, yeah.
How did that go? Was that?
No, well, I've gone back and, spoke at the alma mater a few times. Actually, Greg Luft, my professor, just texting me tonight saying, hey, you coming back this year? So, but it's always fun to go back, because I started, CTV, which is, I guess, turned into a real thing now. I was like one of the founders of that, when literally, like, it was me and like a beta deck and a camera. That, so it was kind of cool to go back and see it's turned into this real thing now.
That's
so
really
it's
cool. What made you decide to go to Colorado
Sure.
State in journalism? As a kid, were you always filming things? Or?
Yeah, I was. Actually, go on YouTube and you type in Jeff Eastin, E-A-S-T-I-N, by the way. I think you can type in, Super 8 or something like that. And a bunch of my buddy who I'd make these little Super 8 movies with when I was like 15, put them all up on YouTube. So there's a bunch of those up there now.
So you ripped them all and uploaded?
Yeah, I guess so. It's a surprise to me,
Are they any
Shout
good?
out to Phil Haskell. Well, it depends on what you mean by good. If by like, no, they're kind of terrible. But, it's kind of fun. I was actually... I just watched them recently, as a matter of fact, this last weekend. I was looking at a couple. But, yeah, I did that. And then what happened was I'd never been to L.A. before. I was, like, wow, L.A., that's where they make the movies and stuff. And a friend of mine, like I said, hey, I'm going to go stay at Phil's house over the weekend. And he said he was staying at mine, and we drove to L.A., which was a whole adventure in itself. I think we were 16.
Wow.
And I got out here, and it scared the hell out of me. This town just scared
What
the
year
living
is
hell out
this?
of me.
You're in
This
LA.
would have been, let's see, I was 16, so it would have probably been, 83, 84, somewhere
So
around
that's like the heyday
right.
with the clouds in the city.
Yes. No, literally. Yeah. And it was, in LA, it was absolutely terrifying. I mean, we showed up and like the adventure out there, like halfway through Utah, I was exhausted because we'd driven all night. And I said, okay, it's time to switch. And Phil goes, well, I don't know how to drive a stick. Like, are you kidding me? This is pertinent information on the drive. So like I had to get up to 40 miles an hour and then we'd swap seats and stuff. And then we blew a radiator hose and finally crawled into the place and just, LA with no money and having no... It was
you didn't
terrifying.
have anything?
No, we had nothing. We literally were two 16-year-old idiots from Colorado, and it was terrifying. And I went back, and I'd actually got accepted to UCLA. And I said, no, I'm terrified. I'm not going to go there. So I decided to go to CSU because it was easy, and went there instead. And, I went in. I was a computer science major my first year. And one day I walked into, because this is before, to date myself, I was the first guy to have not even a laptop, I had a PC. A PC Junior was the first guy in our dorm. And I walked in one day and I looked over and it was like the entire population of, the computer lab was the comic book guy from The Simpsons. They were all these like overweight guys, bearded guys. They're all pale because they don't get out in the sun and stuff. And I went, I can't be this guy.
Did you meet any future editors there?
No, that's pretty good actually. No, but I went in at that point. I went over to what the closest thing they had to a film. They didn't have TV. Well, they had TV broadcasting. Went in and Fred Shook, who was this cool old guy. I said, hey Fred, look, I want to make movies. That's what I want to do. And he said, well, we don't really have a program anymore. But what he did is I became a journalism major, which I took all those core classes, but he unmothballed like the old Arri BL camera for me. And so while they were making news stories, I made a little student film every week, which was amazing. I mean, it was my buddies who were at CU, with Stan Brakhage and stuff, were making these weird experimental films. I was making like a real like little movie every week, which was really awesome training. And then, I graduated. Let's see, what year did I graduate? It's probably in my bio there, but I went and DP'd a couple of films for Roger Corman.
Yeah, you did. You did Lock and Load and White Fury.
Yes, both available at the finer Spanish language section of your video store.
What was your first experience working with these movies? Like, was it kind of like threw you into the fire and kind of hoped that you come out unscathed?
No, it really wasn't that bad. I mean, this was like real low budget stuff in Colorado. It started with Lock and Load. They were shooting in Boulder. I'm from a little town, just a couple miles north of Boulder. And a buddy of mine was working. Corman was producing him. Guy David Pryor was the director, and my buddy was working as a second assistant camera. And he said, "Look, the first assistant camera is an idiot. They're going to fire him probably. So show up on set and just hang out." So I showed up, and sure enough, this kid, the first AC, drops a lens. So they fire him, and my buddy goes over and whispers, and David, the director, comes over, and he says, "Go get me a bucket of f-stops." I'm not an idiot, and I'm like, f-stops are on the lens, not. He goes, "You're hired." So that was literally my interview, and at that point, that was day one. I was the first AC, and then the next day, because I was the director of photography, the DP was being paid $150 a week. Right, this is how low budget it was. Wow. He got a car commercial and didn't show up. So David came over to me and he goes, "Can you point the camera?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "You're now the DP." So that's how I got my first, DP gig. And they liked me enough. They kept me on the second film, and again, it was like 13-day schedules, and it was pretty amazing.
But even with it being low budget, you're still working with the cameras, you're still coordinating people, and you're still getting the shots.
Yeah, it was there was an intimidation factor, but I think, I'd done so many of those student films and stuff that I felt I was very confident around a camera. I really, I felt like I knew what I was doing. So,
did you have any play in the editing to that or anything? Or
no, I mean, literally what happened is I got done and David said, "Hey, if you come out to LA, we got a job for you as a DP." And I'm like, wow, okay. So then, at that point, I decided, okay, I'm going to do this. I saved up all my money. I bought a Volkswagen camp bus, and I, graduated college. And
that's so 80s stereotypical. It really is.
It was awesome. So I headed out. I spent 5 days driving out, and a friend of mine had said, who had been to LA. Actually, her name, she was an older woman, but she had played Nurse Abel on MASH. If you remember MASH, Hawkeye talks about Nurse Abel a lot, and I think she was in 4 episodes as like a a day player.
She was the eye candy though for the
literally 4 episodes, and like in Colorado, she was the film industry. Like people are like, "Oh my God, she's been to Hollywood, she knows." And she did give me good advice. Pond. She said, "If you want to be a director, you need a script. Scripts are the hard thing. Everybody wants to be a director, but you need a script." And I could always write okay, so I longhand the script on the way out. And I called it Shadow Dancer, and it was, based on this Billy Joel song, The Stranger, which I think is right in there. There's a line in there that says, "Have you ever let your lover see the stranger in yourself?" So I did this thing. It was about a doctor who's treating a girl with multiple personalities. He falls in love with a sweet personality. He starts having sex with another. The evil Sharon Stone personality. The two personalities discover each other through video and various means and plot to kill the doctor. So that was the idea. So I longhand this thing, and I finally get to California again. I've been there once, and I decided to go to USC. Oh, that's a nice area. So I go there, park my van off campus. Luckily, I put on my backpack, which had the script, which was longhanded in a notebook. I go walk around campus. I come back. My van's gone. It was right where that pile of glass was. And the cops show up and laugh and say,
"You're never going to see it again."
Never see it again. Welcome to LA, kid. It had everything I own in it. It had my, cashier's check for $2,000, my computer. I mean, everything. And so I'm in tears. I'm standing somewhere, and this is South Central, keep in mind. I mean, where SC is. It's not the nicest area. I'm on a phone. I'm calling my dad. There's gunshots in the background. And I say, "Dad, fly me home." And to his everlasting credit, he said, "You know what? When you get enough money for a ticket, I'll fly you home." And he told me later it was one of the hardest things he's ever had to do because, his poor son's dying out there. But, had that not happened, I'd probably be selling insurance in Longmont
it's
right
tough
now.
Love.
It was. And I'm glad, and I walked around and I ended up falling asleep at the Kinko's over by SC. And this nice lady wakes me up about 3 a.m. and says, you can't sleep here. And she was the manager, so she hired me. So boom, day one, I'm working at Kinko's. So I have a job. And then I walked around the neighborhood. There's an old mansion still downtown on like Garland and Figueroa there. And it was like an old flop house. So I got a room there. Old German guy named Wolfgang Zelder, who had shaken hands with Hitler as a youth. And he tells me, he's like, you don't have money, you can pay me later. So boom, I have a place, I have a job. I'm ruling LA already.
Your whole life is coincidence this far.
So far, yeah.
Like literally, it's you're going through every single needle hole.
Well, yeah, I mean,
not really that.
No, I mean, a lot of my life has been that way.
That's
Literally.
good. That's amazing because I mean, even looking back when in college, like having a teacher that cares enough to let you do short films as opposed to the journalism things, like that builds you up. Then randomly ending up on that movie, they fire the guy.
Right.
And now LA is a terrifying place sometimes. I was at a really sketchy place once, and our car got towed, and literally like we're the only I was with a friend who's a Playboy model, so like stand out, only white people there. And I mean, I don't mean to like bring any sort of race into it, but like it was scary as hell because we're trying to flag down a cop to get a ride at the tow.
Right.
So
yeah,
it's a scary place, guys. If you don't have
it is, especially because when you think Hollywood from Colorado and you get to Hollywood, you're like, damn, that's not Hollywood. That's not, new. Like, and if we're allowed to talk about you, because we were just talking about beforehand, how you got this job.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool. But I mean, I think you did it. I mean, there's threading the needle, but there's also Stephen King says in one of his books, he said, look, yes, you have to be at the right place at the right time, but you can always get to the right place and just wait.
Yeah, you need to walk through the door when it's open for you.
Yeah, and you said, to get this, you came here and you hung out and you were just kind of hanging out and you just showed every day and worked and worked and worked. They made you the host. So
yeah, you got to work. You got to work for free before you work for money.
It's true, but there is a certain amount of. I mean, I do look, and there's a certain amount of serendipity in my life. I mean, just 2 rap parties ago, I showed up at a rap party, changed my life, the whole thing. Long story, which. You can keep asking me questions.
Wait, I'm kind of interested to hear about this rap party.
That's right.
No, okay, all right.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so now you're in LA. You have a place to live. You have a job at Kinko's.
Right.
So how do you jump into this? Was the job still there that he offered you?
Oh, the job. Yeah, it's interesting. So the job was, I came in and they said, look, we'll hire you as a DP. You can work over here for us. Work with Corman. I think it was $1,200 a week. Mm-hmm. This is amazing.
Pretty good.
And they said, great. All you need to do is have your own camera package. And I went, oh, and it was about $1,500 to rent that camera package, and so that was it. So I was done, and then
you didn't look for a Volkswagen van that was maybe you could break into and steal their camera package.
No, it was like at that point, I literally,
we're giving up.
It wasn't necessarily giving up. It was just, that didn't work out. And so I was working at Kinko's. I would come home and I would finish longhanding the script. And then what actually happened was, reports get back in Colorado that I am like the guy, right? People are like, oh my God, Eastin's ruling LA, like runs the town now, from Kinko's. I'm controlling everything. And so I'm longhanding the script. And again, this is kind of a flop house, this mansion. And a lot of actors and things in the house. And I let a few of them read it, and they were like, dude, this is the worst piece of crap I've ever read. This is absolutely terrible. And, I don't want to be a writer necessarily, so they're probably right. So I kind of shelved this thing. And Greg Richards, who was my college roommate, he gets through, oh my God, Jeff. So he shows up one day and he goes, dude, I heard you're running the town. I'm like, not so much running it as, I'm making copies for people who run it. But, he reads this and he goes, dude, this is really good. And I'm like, really? Everybody else hates it. And he goes, they're jealous, whatever. So Zalman King, who did Two Moon Junction, Wild Orchid. They
Lots of erotica.
Erotic thrillers, I guess. And they had just set up to do, what's it called? For Showtime, I'm totally blanking on it. Red Shoe Diaries.
Okay.
And he, Greg's buddy was a PA on the show. So unbeknownst to me, he takes my script, which is a long-handed script. There's no copy of this thing. You work at Kinko's, you would think the brain would work. I would make a copy, but no, there was no copy. Greg takes it out of my drawer, leaves it on Zalman's assistant's desk. And I don't know anything about this. So a couple days later, I get a call from this guy. He's like, hello, this is Henry. And, Jeff, Zalman's assistant, want to buy your script. And his accent was about as bad as mine, so I assume it's a lie, right? And so I ignore the message. A couple days later, I get another call. This is Butch Kaplan. I'm a producer with Zalman and want to buy your script. Greg, you're an idiot. So I delete the message. Third time he calls, it's Zalman saying, we want to buy your script. And I tell Greg, what are you doing? And he's like, are you an idiot? And he tells me what happened.
You're playing hardball.
Yeah, exactly. So I sell it to Zalman. Sell it to,
Sell the option to.
Yeah, I'll put that in quotes. It was like $32,000. I'm high-fiving. I ended up netting like $2,000 off the script deal, right? Because it said 32,000 if it gets made and if it outgrosses, Titanic and if, all this stuff. So I go to Kinko's like, screw you guys, I got a real job, And so, a year later, I'm begging them to come back. No, and that, I kind of was actually. But, so I sell the script, so $2,000, whatever, I'm in pocket, I'm very excited. And, so I spend like a year developing it for Zalman. And the one thing Zalman said is, do not get an agent, do not get a real lawyer, we will take care of you. So the first thing I did is I went and got an agent and a lawyer. And first thing they do is break the deal with Zalman, And then my agent, I guess I can use names, Jeff Robinoff at the time, who ended up kind of running Warner Brothers for a while. He always called it the play, because again, I told you what it was about, right? And it was two people in a cabin. I wrote it for me to go direct, right? And he called it the play. And I'm like, great, man. And he's like, yeah, we're going to set this up. We're going to make you a millionaire. And then like through excited, he goes, yeah, nobody wanted it. That was it. We're done. And so suddenly I'm sitting here, I've got my $2,000. That's all I got. I'm freaking out. Ultimately, another agent sells it. And so that particular script I've sold, I think, 6 times now. And actually, it's made me enough money, but it never gets made. So I kept bouncing around. But the thing is, it kind of motivated me. I said, well, I can actually do this. I can write something somebody wants. So I took sort of the $5,000 I had, and I tried, and then didn't really work. So I ended up going back to Colorado. I kind of panicked, went back to Colorado, and I was back there. And there was a point where, I was back in Colorado and thought, I'll give it up. I'll give the dream up. And I had this, ultimately from selling the script a couple times, I had $6,000 in my pocket. And I was working at a bank through a friend of my dad's got me the job, working at a bank, and they were about to promote me to assistant loan manager. And it was a really big deal.
That would be a career.
And it was a career. And I walked in and they had a cake for me on the day of my promotion, and I quit. I said, I'm out. So my parents, everybody in my life was like, are you a moron? And I'm like, I don't know if I am or not. So I took my $6,000 and I started making a movie myself called Held Up. And so I wrote it really quickly. It was about this guy that gets trapped in a convenience store.
But you got Jamie Foxx.
This was long before Jamie. I was going to do it. I took my $6,000. I rented a convenience store in Colorado. And talk about coincidences again. A buddy of mine who I'd met at Kinko's, this guy Eric Fleming, I said, hey, would you register this thing at the WGA for me to save the cost of mailing it in? Because this is before email, keep in mind.
Yeah.
So I sent him a copy, and he's going to walk it over, for me. He's going to walk it over and take it in. He reads it and goes, hey, this is pretty good. It's pretty funny. And I said, oh, cool. And he goes, can I show it to my agent? Yeah, whatever, because I'm going to go make this thing, right? Screw it, I'm coming back. And then I get a call, and there's like a bidding war suddenly between Propaganda and Trimark Pictures for it. Wow. And so they're like, hey, we want to, Trimark won, and they want to buy this thing and make it. Okay, well, we need you to do some rewrites. And I don't know if you know the name Neil Moritz. Neil's a huge producer, Fast and the Furious. I know what you did a lot of summer.
He's done a lot. He's still doing a lot.
Yeah, and this is before he was that guy, but he had been the producer on it, and he calls me and says, well, we need you out here. And I went, well, I live in Colorado. I can't.
Oh, and there's that $6,000 you're going to make a movie with.
Boom, yep, and I use it to drive out. So I drive out, I live in the canals, get a house in the canals. I'm living in there, living on Venice Beach. And, that was sort of it. And I came out, Jamie Foxx gets attached. We end up making a long, crazy story on that one, too. But that one gets made. And then I sold another thing to this thing called Freelancer, which got me True Lies 2. And then Neil comes back into my life and says, hey, you want to do TV? And I'm like, TV? What's that? Why would I do that? And he goes, I don't know. They say the money's good and you don't have to travel. Oh, okay. And we did Shasta McNasty was the first show. Mm-hmm. Which was, funny in itself, called at various points the lowest pinnacle of television. I was considered like the worst television writer in history by one review. I know I didn't, not in history. I mean,
you didn't take that to heart.
No, exactly, which was sort of interesting. So no, but it was kind of devastating. But Shasta was what it was. It was a great learning experience. And then after that, I did a couple of pilots that didn't work, and then did NBC, which is a big cop show or Hawaii, which is a big cop show for NBC, and then that didn't work, and then White Collar worked. So
White Collar worked. White Collar's been working phenomenally well, and I do want, before we get into White Collar, I do want to ask, okay, James Cameron offering you True Lies 2. Mm-hmm. How?
That was interesting. It was like it was an open assignment, believe it or not, and I didn't know at the time. Like Lightstorm does a ton of projects, but because Jim's schedule, a lot of them don't get made. So. But everybody wanted True Lies 2. And so I submitted Freelancer, which was this thing I'd written for Fox 2000. Mm-hmm. And, I thought it was pretty good. But it was kind of a big comedy thing. It was about a guy who He was like kind of a Tom Selleck who was on this like 80s TV show where he played a bodyguard who gets kicked out of the White House for sleeping with the First Lady, right? He was one of the one of the Secret Service, sleeps with the First Lady, gets kicked out, and he becomes like a rock and roll bodyguard called Jake Lancer, right? And basically there's this sheikh from, I think it was Qatar. I think he's a sheikh from Qatar, and he's like more people have tried to assassinate him than any other person in the universe, and nobody wants to be his bodyguard because they all end up dead. And so he's like, well, you know what, give me Jake Lancer. And this, through this,
Jake Lancer, bodyguard,
right,
rock and roll style.
So our guy assumes it's an assignment, so he shows up assuming it's very much Galaxy Quest.
Yeah.
And it was before Galaxy Quest, so I'll take it. But it's very similar, where he shows up and he goes, oh, this is an act, and the bullets are real. And it worked pretty good. And
kind of Bowfinger as well, too.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So so this thing, and so I wrote it, and it got a lot of attention at the time, and various Tom Selleck was attached, Jim Carrey was attached, there was all these people attached, but it kind of put me in that world. And I was with UTA, and my agent said, hey, do you want to audition? Do you want to go in and pitch for True Lies, for the sequel? And I'm like, are you kidding me? I mean, like Spielberg and Cameron were like it to me. Those were the guys. And so I went in and. I'd come up with a take, which was, I don't know, it was a big crazy take where like there's this thing where like they're going through the channel and they blow both ends of the channel, and these bad guys have a thing where they go down and they're gonna extract this dude and this whole thing. And I'm working on Shasta McNasty at the time, which is a UPN show, very low budget. And
very different.
Very different. So I pitched this and go through several interviews. I mean, my greatest moment of my career probably is I'm sitting there and I finally get up to Cameron. It's like level 5 of the interview process. And I'm sitting there and he walks in and he looks at me and he goes, you're funny. I was like, thanks. He goes, I read that script. You're funny. A lot of people think they're funny, but you're funny. Okay, I'll take that from Cameron. So, he does that, and we sit there and talk about it, and he's like, no, I like your take, it's pretty cool, stuff like that, I like, we'll do this. So he hires me, and I mean, it was like a big deal. I mean, I was especially enjoying the people who said I was the worst writer in television history. It's in
biting their tongue, putting the foot in the mouth.
No, I think they were assuming at that point Cameron was batshit crazy, because clearly he had just hired the worst.
People still assume that, though, still.
Right, so they were like, oh, well, of course he's crazy, he hired the worst writer in television history, so how could he be anything but? So at that point, this is what I hadn't learned about the industry. So Harry Knowles, who was doing AintItCool.com, I don't know if he's still around.
I don't.
Yeah, but back then he was like the big gossipy guy, and all of a sudden he in one of his stories like a few days later, because it was a big deal, True Lies 2, it got announced, it was a big deal, and Harry was like talked about how he had used a medium to kind of astro project into Jim's office and read my treatment, and he nailed it. He clearly had a copy of this thing. So I don't know. So I get a call from Cameron the next day, and he's like, basically, screw you, you're fired. Like, I can't believe you'd go to the press. And I'm like, what the hell? I had no idea, right? Well, it turns out that Harry's people found out who I was and had paid one of our PAs like $500 to rifle my desk for it on Shasta McNasty. We fired the PA, but that's how they got the thing. So Jim was like, well, now we have to throw that out and we got to start over. So we tossed out my pitch, started. No, believe me, but this is like, I had no idea, right? And Jim was he's sympathetic at that point. He's like, look, it's a new world. People, this will be a new world for you, which it really was. I mean, one of my favorite stories is I'm sitting down and Schwarzenegger wants to meet me, of course. And so
of course.
Well, yeah. So it's like he wants to know who's about to screw up his
trip,
career, right? So I sit down and get invited to Shotzi on Main. And this is one of those things where it's one of those stories I was just actually just telling Courtney this over the weekend, which was I never smoked a cigar before, and it's like, come smoke cigars with Arnold. So I actually buy cigars for dummies, right? Because I've never done this before. So I finally get there and I'm trying to like light it and do something. I haven't done this. So I finally get there and Arnold's, he's not there. And this is right. He'd just come off of, or actually not come off of, but Gladiator was big.
Okay.
And I don't know if you remember the guy, the huge, he's like 7'3", the trainer, Russell Crowe's trainer in that movie. He's like the big monster guy. Arnold was hanging out with that group. So all of a sudden he's next to me and Arnold's across from me. And first of all, Arnold's much shorter than I expected.
So you're slightly intimidated.
Yeah, I'm freaked out, and he's just across from me. He's got this kind of glare on him, and he looks at me, and he's like, let's see, what was it? Because it was very intimidating. And I said, "Hey, it's very nice to meet you." He doesn't say anything. He just looks at me, and he goes, there are two ways to write really good action. Because either you know every action movie ever made, or you're a very physical guy yourself, and just looking at you don't look particularly physical. And that was my introduction. I'm like, well, I know a lot of movies. Okay, good. I said, he's like, so why do you think Jim hired you? And I said, I don't know. I guess he likes what I do. He goes, we hired you quickly. And I said, yeah, he did. And he goes, hired fast, fired fast. I like that. And then boom, he's gone again. Literally, that was it. I was like, holy God. And like, I literally was like, I want to quit now, So at this point, I'm like, okay, I might as well quit. The one saving grace was after I did the draft, and I talked to Jim, and I'm like, and he's like, nah, ignore Arnold, whatever. And, after, just as an addendum to that, I'd finished the draft and turned it in, and which was like 6-8 months later, and Jim had read it and really liked it and had a meeting with Arnold and stuff like that. And I was actually with a couple of executives from UPN. I was at some restaurant, and all of a sudden Maria Shriver comes over to me, and she goes, Jeff, hi, how are you? And I'm like, hey, good to see you. And Arnold walks over, and he's like, Jeff, how are you, man? I read the draft. It was excellent. Just very excited to be working with you. 9/11 kind of kiboshed the whole project.
Oh, wow.
And, but again, it's like things, if you're going to lose certain things at 9/11, I figure losing a film project.
I mean, True Lies has the epitome of a scene where you're shooting a missile through a giant.
Exactly.
So
and Jim's like, it's not really. He's
not
like,
a good time.
No, and we were doing biological weapons. It just seemed like not a good time to be doing it. So that kind of, and you never know.
Do they still have the option on the script?
Yeah, they still own it with Light
So
Storm
it's
and
just
everything.
never-
I don't think so. I mean, there was some talk. Then Arnold got elected, and then I think Tom Arnold still tries to about every 2 months. Tom tries to get it going, but
How about Expendables 4, True Lies 2?
Exactly. Yeah, you never know. I mean, because we tried various versions where Arnold's a grandfather, and it's like now it's going to be a great grandfather. But yeah.
So it's still in process. It's just one of those things where it's like you never know if it's going to happen or not.
Exactly. Yeah, I would say at this point, True Lies, a sequel is probably dead.
A reboot's probably a better.
A reboot would be the way to go, I think.
Yeah. That's really cool though. Like I'm excited to know that that's kind of like.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, hard, fast, fast.
Fast.
Maybe I'll get on my business card.
That would. I mean, I like when you first said that, I imagined like True Lies 2 trailer, like critics are raving, hired fast, fired fast.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so guys, I know people watching. We gotta eventually talk about Graceland and White Collar.
Yes.
I love hearing the stories though, because like I love to experience like things that people would never know.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like nobody would ever have known that had you not told it here. So I really enjoy that. So let's talk about White Collar. Sorry
White Collar,
guys, you guys have to stay tuned for the Graceland stuff. Okay, so I do want to ask, what makes you so? Why have you not directed anything?
Really, I mean, look, I've always wanted to direct. That was why I came out here. And really what it was is just an ego thing. I mean, for me, I always knew somebody else could direct it better. I mean, I could do it, but it always felt like for me to direct, it would hurt the show. I may do a great job, but I probably won't do as great a job as Kevin Bray or, Larry Tang or somebody who I know will do a good job. And, look, to Bomer's credit, he was, the one actor that said no. Same reason. It's just like, I want to direct, but the show comes first. So really, that was it for me.
I was actually wondering that because I know Tim DeKay has done an episode, or 3 episodes, right?
He's done one.
And the fact that you and Bomer haven't done a single one, I was kind of interested.
That was really the reason. I mean, it was just, we could have. I mean, the network actually was pushing me to do it. Bomer and I actually discussed co-directing the finale, which we just wrapped, and ultimately because there was a Daniel Sunjata who plays Briggs on Graceland, had injured his leg. Literally
delayed filming,
and like our finale, the White Collar and Graceland finale started on the same day. So, Bomer and I couldn't have done it, and Sandy Bookstaver came in and did an excellent job. It's actually I locked the White Collar series finale today, and it's really good. So
the series finale.
Yeah,
the finale. We'll get into that.
Okay, believe me, I wish. But yeah.
But the directors you work with really a lot are John Kretschmer and Russell Lee Fine. And Russell's actually worked on Graceland a lot. Yep. Is he going to? He's only done Lucky 8 Ball, I think, this season, or has he done?
Who are we talking about, Russell or John?
I think we're talking about John, right?
John,
John, the one who did 8 Ball.
Yeah.
Are we going to see more from them on Graceland as well as Graceland continues on?
we love John. John's schedule just hasn't worked out. Now Russell, he was my DP for White Collar forever, and then he had done that was an interesting one because he'd only done 3 episodes of television total
before White Collar.
Before Graceland.
Oh, before Graceland.
Yeah, he directed 3 episodes of White Collar for us, and just kind of knocked them all out of the park. And then because for anybody that knows, like, doing a pilot for a TV show is a really big deal. For TV directors, being a pilot director is, sort of the pinnacle. That's what you want to be, that guy. And so the competition is huge. He's up against Rennie Harlan, who's, come back off of, Die Hard 2 and everything. And, who's who we've worked with and is really good. But I mean, you get the best of the best. And, for Russell, those 3 episodes he'd done were excellent, but it was really, he and I really, we just knew each other, kind of had that shorthand, and I kind of had to really kind of follow my sword for him. And it's always risky, but he really delivered in case of Graceland.
Well, he's been doing a great job so far. He's done
job.
A lot of the episodes.
Yeah, we cross-boarded, as they call it, 12 and 13, so he could direct, because he was actually originally slated to do the finale of White Collar. But then Daniel got injured, and they got pushed, and then
same day.
So the timing worked. Yeah, so Russell ended up directing 12 and 13 Graceland, which was tonight's episode, which is very good.
Which was very good, and I'm looking forward to episode
finale.
13 next week. And then Doug Hanna, you work with a lot.
Yes, Doug is my
hell of a lot.
My favorite editor. Yes.
Do you? Because you post a lot of pictures on Twitter from the editing room. Are you literally sitting down with Doug hours and hours and hours and hours?
That's what we did. Yeah.
So how much of the editing is? And actually, I kind of want to ask you this. It's a Twitter question, just because people were asking on here. Are there any times where you collaborate with your actors, and what's like an instant where you like their idea more than what you had already filmed, so you decided to put that in?
Sure. I mean, quite often. I mean, I don't know if I do this more, but I tend to collaborate quite a bit with people. I mean, I don't really care where a good idea comes from. And a lot of times the cast. Well, I mean, in terms of like Bomer, is one of the smartest actors. I mean, he always has really good ideas. I mean, Tim and Bomer both actually are very smart about it. Matt, interestingly, will have like a lot of ideas about the show. Tim will always have ideas about, Peter's character. He's very specific that way. And so for, with Bomer, he'll suggest a lot of things. And, a lot of things like a lot of the big story stuff with Neil's dad came from Bomer. Well, talking about Graceland, like Vanessa's idea was for her to get pregnant. It's a little bit of a show. I guess this is not a spoiler, but I don't know what I'd call this, alternate universe, I guess, is in the original story construction, Johnny gets Lucia pregnant.
Okay.
And at the last minute, because originally what had happened with Charlie's character is Charlie was supposed to meet Amber, and Amber was going to be a server at a restaurant in episode 3. And for various reasons, we changed it, made her a bank robber, and kicked her down to her intro to episode 8. And that kind of put me in a tough spot with Charlie, because we didn't, we suddenly had 5 episodes, with not a lot going on for Charlie. And she called me and said, Lucia getting pregnant is kind of awesome. Like, what if it's me instead? So that's the case where we kind of went, oh, that's a good idea. So,
and then Jamie Gray is sitting over there.
Exactly. Well, it was a really dark version of, because originally what happened, I mean, look, there was a version, we never went with this, where she ends up in the hospital, and Briggs, she's on life support with the baby, and,
Briggs has to decide.
Has whether to decide to kill her or not because of various reasons. We didn't go that direction, but
it would have been a little cliche, I gotta say.
Exactly.
Like, it would have been a little bit
You've
too
seen
cliche.
That so many times.
I gotta thank at DJ Tino224 on Twitter for that question. And then so when you're dealing with this, for White Collar, I gotta ask, where did you get the inspiration for the idea for it?
Sure. Well, White Collar was really just going what's not on TV right now. And there wasn't a lot of two-handers, there was a lot of single lead shows. And for White Collar, it was actually a much darker show. It was the original idea, because I was a huge S.H.I.E.L.D. fan. Okay, Sean Ryan's show with Vic Mackey's this dirty cop. So the original idea was called Redemption, and it was about this cop who was in prison for killing his partner. And because he was a suspected cop killer, nobody would work with him, and he was like the guy. And the DA's daughter goes missing, and there's only this gangbanger had grabbed her, or not gangbanger. I'm switching my shows. Cartel leader had grabbed her, and Neil was the only one this cop was the only guy that could help. And so they put a tracking anklet on him, let him out to try to help this. And while he's out, we find out he's actually trying to solve his partner's murder. Or is he looking for the money that both of them supposedly buried? We don't know. And he teams up with this very attractive female cop, and who nobody will work with because they think she slept her way to the top. And those two work together. That was Redemption. And, I was running around with that for a while trying to pitch in. There's some interest. And then to sort of tie it together, Matt Nix had come to me because I'd just gotten a divorce. And by the way, we'll talk about that in a minute. But the Kate storyline in White Collar was was based on my divorce, where my wife had gone crazy and sort of left town and I couldn't find her. So
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, yeah, long story there. But basically, the idea of sort of sitting on set and in Florida and hanging out with Matt and Nick sounded really awesome. Nick's decided not to hire me, I guess because USA had really gone like, oh my God, you got to hire Eastin. He's awesome, because they'd known me from various things. And Nick's was like, well, wait a minute, why do you want me to hire him so bad? Because he's awesome, and screw you. So he didn't hire me. But then Fox Studio was like, oh, well, who is this guy? We need to know. That's how they came to me, and they said, so if I give anybody credit, it would probably be Matt Nix over at Fox, who said, what do you got? And I said, oh, I've got this dark thing about a cop killer and stuff with this anklet. And he goes, have you seen USA Network? And I was like, why? And he goes, run that through their blue sky filter and see what pops out. And what popped out was White Collar. Neil became this con man with a heart, and teamed up with an FBI agent, and that was the idea for White Collar.
I mean, it's been widely successful, and it's honestly, it's kind of interesting because if you look at White Collar and you look at like where it started 6 years ago now, and you see now that people are actually using hackers, and they're using
right.
And you even talked about it on the Graceland podcast. I don't remember the name again, but it was a book, the guy who lockpicked the door.
Yeah, Kevin Mitnick.
Mm-hmm. The police are using him to train people how to do these things. Like they're using people like they are in White Collar, except going out to one of our hosts here, Lauren Ebersol, an AfterBuzz TV host. There's always a mistrust between Peter and Neil, no matter how many times he proves that he's actually there to save him. Will he ever come around to fully trust Neil by the end of the season?
By the end of the series?
By the end of the series.
I would say no.
No.
Wow. Yeah. So that's always been the thing. I mean, even season 1, people were like, take him off the anklet, and can't they just be buddies? And then it's like, well, then it's just
two buddies hanging out.
And really it was that distrust that, let's put it this way, a good friend of mine who's also a doctor had said to me, because you realize, it's always fun to have a shrink analyzing me through my shows. You realize in both your shows, it's always about people who can't trust the people closest to them.
And music boxes.
Yeah, great. Yeah, exactly. And music boxes.
So how involved are you with the casting of the shows?
Oh, completely.
Completely, okay.
Initially, yeah, completely, 100%. I mean, it's a process. I mean, we see hundreds of actors literally for each role. And then, it's a big political thing. And then, this process is you go to, you get a group of actors and then you do callbacks and you weed them down, narrow it down. And I still remember like Matt Bomer. I remember walking in and we were seeing we knew Neil was a good looking guy. We were seeing every really good looking guy in LA. And it's sort of intimidating when you walk into that room. And you're like, wow, those are the best looking people I've ever seen. And you're walking. The one nice thing is apparently I look a little like Kevin McKidd, who, the actor who was in Rome and a couple other things. And I guess I was sitting on the couch, and Bomer, when he came in, goes, is Kevin McKidd producing this? Which I thought was cool. But I remember Gail Pillsbury, who's my casting director, walked in, and in this room of gorgeous looking guys, points to this one, and Bomer's over there. He's got his headphones in. He's wearing cut off jeans and a dirty T-shirt or something. He's just kind of chilling by himself. And she goes, "That's your guy right there." And I was like, "Really?"
Wow.
So that's him. And we had to.
Had she already auditioned him?
She just knew him from other things. She said
Okay.
he's fantastic. He's been in Travel or some other things. Like he's never been used right.
He exudes it.
Yeah, and I've never told Matt this, but famously on my audition thing, I gave him 2 stars and said probably not. And the biggest reason is he was very earnest. Everything was very earnest. He wasn't particularly funny. And then then what you do is you take the actors to the studio. You take them to the studio. It's very intimidating. It's a group of people in suits, and they sit there, and we weed them down from usually you bring 10 to studio, and you weed it down to 4. You're going to take the network for each role. And there's a lot of politics in that. Do you bring the one you really want, and then you make sure you bring really crappy people, to make sure it look better. But then what if they go with the crappy person? And so we brought him in, and we kept taking him to network over and over again. And he wouldn't get it, and they kept saying he's not funny. And he was playing Neil very, and Matt's a very funny guy, but he was playing him very, intense and very sort of, earnest. And finally I said, what if Neil's armor is humor? Instead of, whenever he gets uncomfortable, he gets funny. And Matt, I guess, okay. And literally he came in and suddenly, he's got some of the best comic timing I've ever seen. And then there he is, boom,
Blew the executives
blew away.
away.
Yeah, the second he walked in, I remember because Jackie DeCrinnis and Jeff Walk-Teller were the presidents of the network at the time. Matt, about halfway through the scene, they both just look at each other, and Jackie looks at me, and she goes, "That's him." You know, that was it. So.
Wow. Is that the only time where you've really been blown away by somebody like?
No,
not like blown away. I know.
No, I mean the two. I mean Daniel Sunjata blew us away because again I was saying in the other one that Paul Briggs was supposed to be Swayze from Point Break. He was supposed to be this long-haired surfer guy,
Yeah.
and kind of this introvert. And Daniel comes in and he's this big, hey, how's it going kind of guy, and he blew us away because I talked to Daniel a few times, and he seemed really, I known him from Rescue Me, and I knew he was a talented guy. I just didn't see him as Briggs, but he so blew us away. That was one case where I completely reconceptualized the characters based on the actor, and it was kind of a scramble for me to rewrite the entire pilot based on who he was, because had I left it alone, it wouldn't have worked.
Okay, so it was played as a character who fits the long
Yeah,
hair.
and I do that with everybody. Like once I get the actor, I have to get to know them. Vanessa, it took me a while to figure out who Charlie was, but she was somebody that blew us away. Like literally first audition, she did it, and I know she came in. All the actors out there always like these stories, but she comes in and it's the scene in the pilot where she's got this wallet. We've got the wallet, and she's like, "Johnny, take this outside," and she came over during the audition and she took my wallet, which had stuff in it, and then she just completely goes off script. She's looking, she goes, "What the hell is this? Jesus Christ, you got a fucking Subway card in here? This is crap." And she's literally doing it, and we're laughing our asses off. And I mean, she kind of blew us away, and it was boom. Manny Montana, who was funny who was so obvious for me in the role. Network initially didn't like him.
Really?
I think they thought he was like the real guy, and they still had kind of an older USA mentality, where they had this guy, very good actor, but he was very he's a little chubbier guy, and he was very funny, and he was sort of like Cheech and Chong version. He was kind of the very funny guy, whereas, for me, Manny is like a real version of Johnny.
He's the good-looking guy who's kind of insecure about himself.
Yeah, but I mean, he looks the part.
Yeah.
I mean, he doesn't look like a TV version of that guy. And that's what I finally, I think, used to convince USA was I said, look, this is the guy. I mean, you guys are trying to cast the guy who would play him in the TV show. This is the guy. And, eventually they said, okay. And, I can sort of usually win if I go to the bat for somebody most of the time. And that was somebody that I had to go to bat for because he was so good. Brandon, who's been in here several times, he was kind of a no-brainer. Tim DeKay.
You needed the Red Power Ranger on the show.
Exactly. Well, that was really what got him the part. He brought the helmet in, which he does a lot. So he still sleeps in the suit, he says.
I did actually have a Twitter question from @NextGabe. They said, I heard this is in his voice. I heard there was special chemistry with Aaron and Daniel in their audition. Tell us about how that affected your casting decision.
There were several guys reading for Mike. And yeah, it was Daniel was kind of a no-brainer for us. I mean, he just blew us away. I mean, there was a few guys, for Mike, and there were a lot of different choices, different ways to go. I mean, there were a lot of much darker versions of Mike, a lot of sort of brooding James Dean types, and I think initially we were kind of going in that direction. And Aaron came in, and it was just one of those cases where, especially two actors that have never really worked together. I mean, you're throwing them in a room for the first time. You got everybody in suits. And USA is a very friendly room compared to some. In some rooms, it's like nobody says a word and they're taking notes. But USA will laugh and they'll encourage and they'll kind of talk back and stuff. And the two guys just came together, and it just instantly looked like these two guys were friends. Like it really had a feel of these guys knew each other before. And I asked them later. I said, "Have you guys met?" And they're like, "No," but it felt like they'd been hanging out for a few years, and it was just, I think, that chemistry that really just kind of won the day.
That's really awesome. So I got to get back to White Collar.
Yes, sir.
We keep going back to Graceland because everything leads into each other. It's amazing how these shows are so interconnected because, I mean, it's almost like we have somebody who writes both shows here. It's really, it's weird. I don't know if that works.
That could be.
So, let's see here. What do you think? Oh, this is going to be a tough one for you.
Sure. Okay.
And it's kind of not really a loaded question, but it's kind of it's not a very concise question. I apologize.
Please.
What do you think needs to go into a series to make it as successful as White Collar has been?
We spent a lot of time on that. Look, it's tough. I mean, probably, because you pull out the variables. And, it's like we have different writers for each episode. And I mean, White Collar especially, I was able to keep my voice in the show quite a bit. But, the individual lines and things like that kind of come out. So really, I think to name drop for a second, Cameron said to me one time, there's really two shows you make. You make the one-liner, the poster, which is what gets people in the door. You want to see a, hey, evil machine that travels back in time and kills people. I'll watch that. And then it's the actual execution of that keeps them there. And I think TV especially is, you see the poster or whatever, it's like, hey, do I want to go watch that? And
well, like The Strain. I do the Strain after show here.
Okay.
You see the worm coming out of the eye, you're like, what the hell is that?
What is that? I got to check that out. And then, but once you get there, you better have something to hold them. And I think, I think the concept was good. I think, I think the White Collar pilot's still one of the best pilots. I mean, I really like the pilot. It's one of the few of my shows I would watch. You know what I mean? But I think in that case, I think the casting chemistry was just right. And, look, USA, we spent 6 months casting White Collar, and at a certain point, we were just like, just cast it already. And to their credit, USA kept saying, no, we got to get it right. So I think once you got that initial concept, which hopefully the writing's good and all that stuff, but I think to cast it right is really sort of the key. Because you never know. I remember when I was doing Hawaii, we were sort of everybody was like, ooh, Hawaii, you guys are, the testing went really well, and we scored pretty high and all this stuff. And NBC just assumed we were the one. And there was this little show down the hallway. It was a mid-season. Nobody was that excited about it, called Medium. Okay. And whatever, and literally like nothing else survived that year. And Medium, I think, is still on or something, But nobody knew at the time that people really wanted to see a show, this idea of like, kind of housewife Medium, that concept would really catch on. And, so timing, I mean, right now, like if White Collar came out right now, I don't know if it would work. Hopefully it would, but I don't know if it would.
It kind of caught with the people really into USA with Monk.
Exactly. And then
that kind of crowd kind of moved into White Collar.
Right. And, because again, I've said it before, like Graceland is pretty hardcore. It's drugs and there's a lot of sex and stuff. And White Collar became kind of a family show without trying. I mean, I didn't set out to do kind of this nice Lily White, but we also had a lot of parents saying, hey, we watched this show with our kids, and I was like, oh crap, I'm making a family show. When did that happen? But so I think that, but I think Matt, the chemistry with Matt, Tim, and Willie probably really made it. I mean, I'm always surprised too with like Tiffany and Tim. Tiffany Thiessen was like a big sort of casting. That was one everybody's like, really? Wow, Saved by the Bell, really? But just that relationship between Peter and Elizabeth. What I know is, I know a lot of women who come in and say they really like that on the show. So, I guess to answer the question, I would say like getting a concept that's, I don't know if it has to be new. Like the one thing I always go for is like, you don't want to come up with something that's so new and unique that the network can't bite. They have to have that comfort food feeling, but you have to like
make it interesting and new, like, make something old new.
Exactly, or give it that little bit of a twist. Because otherwise, they're not going to take a chance on you. So there's the practicality of that. It may be the best thing ever, but if you can't get them, to
if they can't, because they're numbers people.
Yeah, exactly.
They're all about the numbers.
Exactly.
So also, God, I always like get it in my mind, then you say something really cool, and it like makes me forget my question. Okay. So you were saying about blah. Seriously, sorry about that, guys. Dun, 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 dun. All right. So, what are some of the challenges you have ending the series?
Oh God, ending the series? Wow.
Because when you have a series like this, like not to throw Dexter under the bus.
Sure.
That was probably one of the worst series endings I've ever seen.
Right.
So like, but then when you look at Breaking Bad, it's probably one of the best,
right?
Because you don't leave with a bad taste in your mouth.
Exactly.
So when you're trying to anticipate what the fans want, but also you have to weigh that against what really makes sense and what's going to be a good ending as opposed to just fan service.
Right.
Like, how do you kind of decide?
Well, like I said, we just locked the White Collar finale today, and it's really good. I mean, it's one of those where, the network was, there was always, is it going to be any good or not? And I could say, genuinely, I think this one's really good. Everybody cries, and it's just, it's sort of an all complete. And we spent a long time, because there was a version of it, which I can tell my alternate version, just because we didn't do it. But at the very beginning, because I'd kind of laid the show out, and I always had, from season 1, my ending was going to be this. It was Neil, it's the final day, he's off his anklet. And, Peter tells him the day before, it's like, you're off your anklet. And, what are you going to do? And he goes, I haven't thought about it really yet. And so we've got Neil, first day, he's a free man, and he's walking down the street, and he gets to the Flatiron building. If you haven't been there in New York, it's a building, very narrow building. And he gets there, and so he's right at the apex of it, and he can either go right or he can go left. And we see he's been tossing a coin. He flips a coin, it comes down, and it lands on heads. And he starts right. And he goes right, And as he goes right, there's Mozzie, and Mozzie's got a limo, and he's like, "Are we doing it? We're doing this." And you realize Mozzie and Neil are going off. They're going to be the greatest criminals in the history of criminals. And then all of a sudden we come back, and Neil's now at the apex of the building again. And he's standing there, and he's flipping the coin. And this time it comes up tails. And he goes to the left this time. And he goes to the left, and he ends up at the FBI office, and he comes in, and Peter's been promoted, and Neil goes in, and he takes his desk as new agent, and he's the new Peter Burke, and he sits down there. And we realize, well, we've seen these two different futures for Neil.
So let me guess, he flips the coin one last time,
and it cuts
he
to
closes
black.
his hand, closes to black.
Yeah, we cut to black before we did it. So that was the ending that I'd always wanted to do.
Oh, wow.
And,
is that the one you've had in mind?
That's
since
one
the
I had
beginning
on
of the
mind since
series?
the beginning of the series.
Wow.
And I sat down with Matt and Tim, and we talked about it, and both of them said, look, it's a good ending for something that may never come back ever again. It's wonderful.
Okay. Because then you're set.
We're set. That's it. You kind of have it. And the
one of those two
futures
options
or whatever. And so they had, which I won't tell you what it is, but they had pitched me a version that they had, and it kind of linked up with a version that I'd been toying with too, which was, and again, I want to say it, but I said, that's pretty good, and I felt it kind of accomplished everything, because really, the hardest part about this is, to end a series like this, you kind of want. You hopefully, like you said, you want people to leave and say that was a good ride, and not what the hell were they thinking, So for us, it was really just a matter of sitting there and saying, okay, what is this ride? And then once we figured it out, and this would be so much easier if we were doing the post show for that one to talk about this, but it was like, at this point, what did we accomplish this? And the hardest part for our series is because no matter what you do in this series, Neil is such a con man that you go, well, we won't believe anything you do. Anything we do, it'll be like, well, of course it's fake. Of course it's not real. Of course
you can never
he's
take it
not
at face
really
value.
going to do that. Yeah. And so that became the real challenge, which I think if you see it, you go, oh, I get it now, what he's talking about. But that
Do you think
became the real
everyone's going to
challenge.
be happy with it?
I think so.
Is it, from all the shows you've written, you marked this season down to 6 episodes. It's you talk about how you talk about how it's like a mini series event.
Right. Yeah.
So is it different directing it, or not directing it, but
yeah, it was right.
creating
Well,
it
the
when you only
difference
have
was
6 hours?
Right, because Graceland is really, it's a serialized show. I mean, it literally is a soap opera. White Collar was never that. White Collar was always a show that had a bad guy of the week, and then a puppy of the week, which is puppies, whoever the victim is that you save, and there was some mythology laid on top of it. But the show was, an episodic show. You could watch episode 6 or 12, and it didn't
matter. You could just jump in
And Graceland's the opposite. And so the different approach for this is, let's make this a serialized. Let's do this. Let's do a long movie. Let's do a little mini series with White Collar and really make it emotional and really make it, delve into the characters in ways we haven't really done before, like dive in deeper.
So this is the miniseries is going to be filmed more like Graceland, and
Correct.
that you should watch every episode in order.
Yeah.
Don't jump in on episode 6.
You can, but yeah, let's put it this way: you can. I mean, having seen it now, I'd say you could probably. If you watch nothing else, watch the finale. Watch the pilot, watch the finale. But you're going to get a lot more out of it if you watch the full 6.
So I got a Twitter question from @Leia_87. You said Sarah and Neil's love story wasn't finished. Will Sarah return in season 6?
When did I say that?
I'm just taking the Twitter questions.
Okay, well, no, I'm kidding. I know I said that. Let's say it won't. Their story isn't finished, but depends. Do you believe in love in heaven? No, I'm kidding. Let's just say that we couldn't get Hillary Burton back for this season. Unfortunately,
so you just have to
pretend
transpose a face onto an extra.
Yeah, slash fiction, baby.
And another Twitter question: do you ever think, or no? Who did all the amazing artwork on White Collar, and how about auctioning it off for charity?
Oh, that's a good idea.
I'd love to own a Caffrey by L.J. Pritchard.
Most of those we had 2. Stephen Beatrice was our production designer, did most of Neil's stuff, but he's a very talented guy. Okay. So there you go. And auctioning them off. I know Fox is auctioning props off, and if anybody buys Neil's anklet, I want it because they wouldn't sell it to me.
You don't
it's a long
ask.
story. I know. I did ask.
You don't ask.
Don't ask.
You walk in and it's just mysteriously
Well, I did.
disappears.
Unfortunately, I was not. I was in Manhattan last weekend. Had I been there the weekend before, I could have walked in, but they'd already given it away. So I got Neil's toaster, is what I got.
You got Neil's toaster.
I was kind of kidding me. What do you want? And I said, what is, I figured everybody was taking everything. I wanted the Socrates bust that was sitting on Neil's desk. They said, Bomer's getting that. I'm like, fine. Can I have this? No, I can't have that. Can I have this? No. I want his toaster. And they sent me his toaster.
So I'm going to pitch you an alternate ending to White Collar. You should go film it now.
All right.
You find out that the thing around his foot was just not there the whole time.
It was just his
And
imagination.
then he's just been sitting in a wheelchair the entire time.
We actually, funny you say that. We actually had one. It was in the episode where, I think it was season 1. It was, God, I can't remember the name of it. It was where Neil's in basically they drug Neil up and they take him to a mental institution.
Okay.
God, I can't. It's one of my least favorite episodes, but the fan favorite episode. Anyway, Mozzie gets left. At one point, Mozzie snuck into this mental institution and gets left there. And we had written an alternate script called In Mozzie's Mind, where he'd actually been given a lobotomy. And the entire series was Mozzie solving these crimes in his mind. But of course, the crook always goes free because at the end, the killer or whatever, Mozzie can't talk. So every episode ends. And Dan Shattuck, who at the time was our writer's assistant, now is my number 2 on Graceland, had written this really brilliant script called In Mozzie's Mind. So that was really the premise of it, is Mozzie
really
solving
sad and
crimes in his
dark.
mind. And yeah, it's too bad. I think somebody should make it.
I mean, you could have it just be like, okay, tomorrow's your last day with the bracelet on.
They're like, what? Bracelet?
And then he gets shot, and he's like, 2 days from retirement.
Yeah, there you go.
And that's the end of the series. Fade to black.
Oh, I love it.
All right, guys. So we're gonna actually. I think I went through all of the Twitter questions
Cool.
for that. I want to talk Graceland
Okay.
because Graceland's the one I watch religiously. Do the show here in AfterBuzz. If you watch Graceland, you're only watching this interview. You need to go watch our after show because we actually had you on it tonight.
Yeah, it was fun.
And next week we will have Jamie Gray Hyder and Eric Valdez, who played Lucia and Carlito, respectively.
Yeah.
All right.
And
So
I will try
Graceland.
to drop by if I can. So.
I'll text you. Make sure you
No,
know
I would
when
love
it's going
to.
on.
You guys are really close to me. So.
So, Graceland. When we had Joe Henderson in here
Yes.
last season, he talked about how this has been a script that's been in the pipeline for so long, but it was very dark, and it's, of course, that gritty cop drama in USA is if you couldn't
Not
get
that.
White Collar on it,
Yeah,
then
how are you
like,
gonna do this,
how are
right?
you going to get Graceland on it? And I have a second part of this question, but it's just like, how long have you had this script of Graceland, and what was the
Sure.
original story?
The original story was identical.
Okay.
The only difference, and I think it was 2003 when I wrote it. It was originally, it was based on a true story, and my agents at CAA had hooked me up with this guy, John Marcello, who was really in the pilot. There was Silvo's character, who's kind of the din father of the house. John was the real guy. There was the real house in Manhattan Beach where these agents would hang out. He had gone in and met some agents at CA, and they said, you got to meet this guy. So I met him, and he told me about this, and let me meet some of the real guys. And I went, this is really cool. And what really got me was, it's a true story, but again, it's like the house was the one place these guys lied for a living, and they could come in and they could decompress in this world.
Irony, because they don't get to
Exactly,
decompress
and that
in
was
there
sort
at
of
all.
the thing. Is what they told me. They said, well, people only live about literally 2 years is about the max you can live in the house. I said, why is that? And they said, burnout. And I said, because of the job. They said, no, because of the roommate situation. A good friend of mine, Jane Pointer, and her husband Tabor were in the original Biosphere 2. It's the experiment where they lock people in there, for a while. And they went batshit crazy within a couple of weeks. They formed into faction. The Graceland was very similar, the real one. Graceland was our name for it. They didn't have a name for their house. But, and so just the drama on that I thought was really interesting. My biggest fear as an idea was I thought it sounds too much like a fake idea. It's like, so you have this house and they're all good looking undercover agents. You're going to place
It
them in this
sounds
house.
like you're
Sounds
smoking
too-
weed and like
completely-
bitching to your
yeah,
friend.
completely
Like,
fake.
So dude.
I kept. So if you watch the pilot, there's a big thing saying based on a true story, and then USA
Pulls you
dropped
in.
it. Where I'm like, yeah, because I was like, it is real. We're not making this up. There's certain things we didn't get to do. Like they had one. I want to say they called it the Jungle Room, which was because you weren't allowed to have civilians upstairs, but they dated, and so if you wanted to have a girl over or a guy over, they had a room downstairs, and each agent could claim it, and then they had a drawer, you'd pull it out, and you put up your own photos and stuff, you decorate it, put on your own sheets. That's where you took your,
They cut that out?
USA at the time was, we were kind of, and they felt it was a little too misogynistic.
A little bit. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm like, really? Now we're like burning
But I would
girls'
see
bodies
Paige being
and-
the only one using that
exactly,
room.
like stabbing people to death, burning their bodies, but that's the misogynistic part of it.
I mean, we still get to burn bodies in season of Graceland.
Exactly.
And that was actually a question by. It was based on Who Are the Real Briggs and Mike by
It really
Rosie
w-
Rebecca.
It really wasn't. I mean, it was based. The guys that I met, I didn't base anybody in particular. There was one guy that, because I never got the real names, but was similar to Johnny. But Johnny was originally going to be much more of a dog. The guy that I met had several different phones. Like every girl he had a different cell phone for. They were all different colors. So a piece of tape would be like, oh, there's yellow calling. Hey, baby, how's it going? How's it going?
That would
honey?
get too confusing.
Yo, Steph, what's up, baby? It's like that kind of thing. So based on that, it was we wanted to go that way. But again, that got dropped. It's again season 1 being a little too misogynistic. So like those things kind of came out of the show, those certain elements. And we decided to just go straight with heroin and torture. So
it's just skip the misogyny. We'll just go for boiling like freaking lead in somebody's eye.
Exactly, which is
like
fine.
Like, that's fine.
Characters welcome, baby.
So with shows like Breaking Bad and The Wire, Shield, like all the darker dramas have actually paved way for the showrunners to have the ability to kind of lead their show without the network kind of peeking their head in and being like, hey, you need to make that person's crocodile a puppy.
Right.
Like, for a worse, I can't find a worse analogy than that, but
that's pretty bad. But I know what you mean. Yes.
But like, from doing White Collar and starting White Collar, what are some of the differences you've kind of noticed when starting Graceland now with your control over the show and where you can take it?
Yeah, it's interesting because again, like I said, when they said we'd like to do Graceland, and I said, look, I don't want to do it for you guys. I love USA, and I really do. I mean, Alex Sepia, one of the smartest guys I've ever worked with, Jackie DeCrin is very smart, Jeff Wachtel, very smart people. They give some of the best notes I've ever gotten. And my problem was, it's like, but you guys are USA. I wrote the show to be really dark. I mean, it wasn't supposed to be anti-white collar, but it was like, I wanted it to be what it is. I wanted it to be sort of like a real reflection to a certain extent. I mean, the grittiness and the pain these people go through. I can't really do that,
on USA.
Yeah, I mean,
as it was.
Right, white collar has a certain, like a heightened reality. The bullets don't feel real. And Graceland, I wanted it to be. So I said, I don't know if I want to do it. And they said, no, we're going to let you do the show you want. And I'm like, really? Okay. And I mean, they didn't mess with me too much. There's 2 things they really did. The first season, again, the misogyny thing, but that was pre the show starting. Yeah. And, and I, whatever, okay, fine. But like no needles, that became the big thing. So if you watch season 1, you can actually see a needle going through skin. We had all those shots and we ended up having to re-edit the episodes. So you see them start to. So that was one thing, which I thought was, in terms of like the things they could mess with, okay.
Yeah.
The only thing I really regretted was when Briggs kills Juan.
Yeah.
Or when Juan dies and Briggs is there, Briggs was supposed to be high on heroin.
Oh, wow.
And they backed that. Because, I mean, that was where the whole season was leading, and that's what it was written. And, Jeff Wachtel, hopefully I can talk out of school about him, called me and said, he's like, you know what, I'm not going to air the goddamn episode. I'm just going to put up a big sign and say, Jeff Eastin's a fucking idiot. He's like, you're not going to have the lead of our show killing a guy while he's on heroin. And I'm like, but that's the whole point. So we really went back and forth, and we shot it, with him drunk. Which, okay, I mean, he's got the bottle.
He's
and stuff
inebriated.
Like that. Right, and I made them steal a shot of him with his heroin rig down on the ground instead of the bottle. And I came real close to just saying screw it at the last minute and undoing it. But I don't know. I mean, but I was a little panicked at that point because we didn't know. I mean, we hadn't done any testing. And there was a lot of fear because, again, this was sort of uncharted territory for USA. I mean, the fact that Briggs was Odin and all these sort of darker things, and he's, involved in this guy's murder. And they were like, you're done. You can't. Come back from this. And, Dan Shattuck, who I mentioned a lot, he and I have had many debates. One of his things is like, networks sometimes confuse characters that are likable with relatable with watchable. Like I would argue that Walter White isn't necessarily likable, but he's infinitely watchable. And that was sort of the thing with Briggs. But we found out Briggs was actually somewhat relatable. And, likable is what the networks used to always go for. And I think they've now started evolving, going, you can have a horrible character people hate, but they will tune in to watch that person. I mean, if you're into, which you probably are, but like, Game of Thrones, Jamie Lannister's a good character Jamie Lannister I also took from that you can rehabilitate a character. I mean, Briggs at the end, when they do all their post-testing and they found Briggs was by far and away the most popular character. People love Briggs. Why? Well, women liked him because they could change. I can change him. He won't kill forever. Yeah. But also they felt like he had a good heart, in him, and that you could do that, so you could get away with a lot more.
Even if it's from a tainted place, he's doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, and I think for USA, that was sort of a learning curve for them to go, oh, you can actually have a very, very flawed character. Because before you had, a lot of their shows, it was sort of that, there's a Boy Scout perfection, which in a lot of ways, I think, like with Mike's character, I think can turn off an audience because you've got a guy that's too good. I've heard from, Sam, my assistant, is like, I didn't like Mike. He was always so goody-goody. She's like, oh, he's burning people now. I like him now. He's interesting.
He's taken after Briggs a little bit more.
Right, he's suddenly become more watchable, even though I don't know if he's more likable. So, so for USA, that again, so that was really the only time I felt that USA had really kind of gotten in my way. Was with Briggs on heroin. But again, at the time, I didn't know. I'm like, wow, are we going to make a character that can never recover? Can Briggs really ever recover from this? And then, although if you watch the finale next week, well, there's a couple of yeah, if you're probably listening to this, you probably will. But yeah, there's a couple of things I'm going, boy, I don't know if we're going to recover from this. So,
like as the character, or like the
from
network?
the character.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the network knows what we're doing.
Because I think another Twitter question was, do you think Briggs and Charlie can ever?
Oh yeah, yeah, Briggs and Charlie, fine. That's not the problem.
Ew.
Yeah.
There you go.
Somebody. Yeah.
Well, the scenes for next. I'm not going to talk about the scenes for next week. So this is probably a messed up question to ask. Graceland.
Yes, sir.
The name. A lot of people feel that detriments the show, and that a lot of people don't know what to expect when they hear Graceland.
True.
So your viewership has not been as high
possible
in the live viewings, but on the playbacks, it's watched a lot.
I would say, yeah, that may be true. Well, part of it is, look, USA's got a lot of theories. One theory being that we have a more affluent audience because they don't watch TV. If you're more affluent, you watch it online. Okay, because you own a computer, I guess. I'll take that. If they want to sell that to me, I'll buy it. Because yeah, our +3s and +7s are usually, or L3s and L7s are usually higher. It may be. I mean, look, names is a big deal. They didn't like the name Graceland. It's my name. But like White Collar was interesting because USA had tested that, and most people thought it was going to be a show about a priest.
That's true.
And they said, no, we don't want to, Pros and Cons was the name that they were going to go with. And I said, I will quit right now if you call it Pros and Cons.
Too funny.
White Collar ended up being okay. And Graceland came back. Most people thought it was a show about Elvis. And it became a real issue. But, Safe House was a title. And we had, and look, for me, it was an obvious title. But, I was more than willing to change it because I don't like doing dumb things to hurt my show. Like artistic integrity be damned. It's like if I can get another, 4 million people watching it, I'll change the name to, whatever, Pros and Cons, I guess.
Well, it's kind of interesting because it's just looking at the name, like, I don't think, like, I randomly discovered the show. Like, Julie Parton, who I think you've met Julie.
Yeah.
She hosted the first season with me. And, I jumped on the show because she didn't have a co-host, and I was like, oh, what's this? So I started watching it. I didn't know what Graceland was before I watched that first episode. And it adds a nice little cheeky humor calling it Graceland and the jokes that you can play off of that. So it's great. I think it's an interesting choice to see, and I'm glad to see that it got that second season.
Yeah.
Because with the second season, it really gets in deep with, if you guys get this thing on like Netflix, like, people are going to be watching the hell out of it.
Yeah, not good. Yeah, thanks.
Are you guys working on that right now?
Yeah, I hope so. No, yeah, I thought it was on Netflix. It's not yet. I thought they did a deal. Maybe not.
I haven't seen it on there yet.
You're probably right.
So, character-wise, why is Mike the only person that can put Briggs on his toes? Because it seems like when Mike's not there, everything's all happy-go-lucky days at Graceland.
Right.
But when Mike's there, Briggs is he the only one who can go toe-to-toe with Briggs, or the only one who calls Briggs out on his
Initially, yeah, it was it. Initially, Briggs was sort of set up as kind of the father of the house, and he's kind of the guy. And a lot of it, too, was, again, the way the show was constructed, it was kind of Mike versus Briggs.
Yeah.
It's interesting if you look at the two posters this year, because last year's poster was really an ensemble poster with the whole group, and this year was Mike versus Briggs.
Mike in the background.
Which I kept telling USA you should swap those. Last year's would have been a great season 2 poster and vice versa. But yeah, just the conceit of the show was really Mike versus Briggs, and then kind of, it was an ensemble. USA came again this year and said, you guys have a real ensemble. Let's do an ensemble. And look, probably I felt like because of the way the season broke down, in the last show I talked about how Zelensky was supposed to die about episode 6, and because that didn't happen, because we didn't kill him, some other things moved around, and I really did sort of give Briggs short shift this year. Like his storyline really doesn't kick in until episode 6, and that was so I think one big mistake on my part was. It's always like probably not the best idea to create a character, especially somebody to me as interesting as Briggs was last year, and make them good at the beginning of the season. Like good characters are boring characters. And Briggs to be like, I'm going to be good this year, okay, which means I'm not going to do anything interesting. And really until he does the vodka boarding in episode 6, where we start to see the dark Briggs come out. In reality, I should have moved that up to about episode 3.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
Because it was a little bit slower moving.
Yeah, and part of it was just, we had laid out so much story, and this was a big learning curve for us, because, coming off White Collar, which most of my writers had, we didn't have a lot of experience in serialized storytelling, other than just what we liked. And the second we started, because again, I think Johnny's got a great story. I think Paige had a great story this year. Jake's had a really interesting story this year. And so we had these really cool stories going out, and they took up a lot more screen time than we thought. So suddenly what was supposed to happen in episode 3 is happening in episode 6. etc. Things are getting stretched out. So suddenly Charlie doesn't have a big storyline at the beginning. Briggs doesn't have a big storyline. And so ultimately, it was probably a mistake on our part to do it that way.
I don't really think it's a mistake. I think it just plays out differently than it could have.
Yeah, I just wish I wish I'd have given Briggs and Charlie something a little more meaty at the beginning of the season is all.
Yeah, I guess that does kind of make sense. And this season we've also dealt with Jake's a lot, with Jake's son. We haven't dealt with Jake's son in a few episodes now, but is this going to be a theme that kind of runs through into the next coming seasons, or are we kind of coming up on the end of the arc?
I think we're kind of done with that arc. I mean, really, there was a point where that arc was supposed to extend out. And again, talking about the Zelensky thing that was supposed to crash into that, where we were going to have Jake's go back and Daniel.
His son.
Not the son. Sorry, Derek, who's the guy, the guy that's the new father figure for Daniel. Jake's was going to go get in a fight with him. Finds out because we set up earlier there's a 2-striker, and that was set up because Jake's goes and reports him and gets the guy thrown into prison on 3rd strike to try to get the family back, which is an evil, horrible thing to do. And ultimately, we abandoned it. I said, you know what?
That would make him way too unlikable.
Makes him too unlikable, and I don't know if that's something we could recover from. So we dropped it, and again, because the other storylines were picking up speed, we kind of unfortunately left poor Brandon hanging out there a little bit. So I think in terms of the son storyline, I mean, he'll probably be back at some point, but that storyline itself is closed.
Is there a reason you guys just hate Jake's?
No, I mean, look, he was set up that way, and Brandon always gripes, man, you guys make me into a dick all the time. But he was sort of designed that way. I mean, the one thing I'm sure Brandon, if he was in here, griped about his dreads. He wants to cut them.
Really?
Yeah, and that's one of those where, I haven't decided if he's Samson and then all his power lies within those dreads. I mean, it's kind of what got him the part to it. Well, I shouldn't say he's an incredibly talented actor, but I mean, that look was so iconic, and he really wants to get those things shaved. So, we were talking about doing that and really kind of having this guy who, go. Initially, he was going to shave his head on camera because he's had those things I think for 14 years now or something like ridiculous.
I mean, you have to for them to be that long.
Yeah, and he was going to shave him on camera, and we were going to have this thing where he did it after he, abandoned Paige and almost got her killed in there.
Oh.
And that was going to be the thing, and he was going to rise from the ashes and kind of come with that. The problem is, with all the other storylines, we didn't have the real estate to give him that, Phoenix rise from the ashes. So it was like, hold, we still may get rid of the dreads, but if we do it, we need to do
it in season 3. So you got to keep him for a while.
Exactly, and I just unfortunately, so he has to suffer through another off season with dreads.
Do you have it be like somebody's grabbing them, so they have to cut them to get out of there, that kind of thing.
There you go. Love it.
And then with Paige's character, really this season has the girls. Like her main focus has been the girls, these girls. Is it? And I know Serinda is very passionate about this subject as well.
Correct.
Did she have any part in creating this storyline, or yes?
Yeah, she did. It was like we were sitting there talking about it. We talked a lot about doing some kind of human trafficking storyline, and she was very personally involved with that. And initially, the problem with it was the network and studio both felt that it was such a dark world to go into. We didn't want to go into it. Now, the good news is we really felt that episode 6 was one of our best episodes I've ever done, and I think our ratings jumped 46% that night, which was awesome.
Episode was 6?
That was one where Paige goes in.
Where she swallows the balloon.
Yeah.
That was crazy.
Yeah. And
it was so infuriating. Like, there's not like from the seat, you're like, come on, Jake's like.
Yeah, what are you doing, man?
Yeah,
and that was sort of like we'd crashed. And I mean, Dan and I had come up with that idea early on the season. But I mean, she had said, is there anything you can do, with sex trafficking? Can you do something with that? So, personally, she does a lot of work with those groups and stuff. And we said, yeah, we'll think about it. And again, USA and Fox were like, it wasn't that they don't want to go to that world. It's just because we knew in design we're going to spend like half the freaking season in there, and it's such a depressing thing, with those girls.
It's really dark too.
It is. It's horribly dark, and that was the real question: is do we want to? Are people going to not tune into a show because it's like, oh God, what a horrible dark world to go into each week? And ultimately, again, USA, to their credit, said, go for it. Let's try it. And we did it. And actually, it's been one of the better storylines we've pulled off because in 10 we have the big shootout where they rescue them and stuff like that, which I think was good.
Well, it affects all the characters differently because we have Jake's being able to have that moment with Paige, and Paige being affected by multiple things, plus Mike being stuck in that situation and covering up the murder, the murder of Lena, covering it up. And honestly, I loved the character of Sola. The actor,
he was fantastic.
He's amazing.
Man. He's so good, yeah.
Every time I see him in something, I never remember his name.
No, exactly. I wish I could.
But
no, he's absolutely.
He's
fantastic.
great. He's really good in what he does. And
that character, I mean, casting him was just. It was like. because that character could be so, if he's too over the top, then he's goofy. But I mean, he really nailed it.
He did. And then when he's killed by Sid, now we focus more on Sid. Now that the
now
girls
sort
are
of
kind
the
of
design
over.
is to transfer over.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because we have this evil group of people,
Exactly.
and now we're moving into this group of cops that are like becoming
Correct.
the evil people. And right now we are at a crossroads here where Briggs is undercover, but his cover's blown, and he doesn't
Correct.
know it.
Right.
What can we expect for this finale?
It's pretty cool. I would say that. Let's see. There's one character becomes the Judas for the rest of the characters. It like kind of completely changes everything. One character is the betrayer, and
Oh,
it's-
Johnny.
I don't know, but yeah, it sort of changes everything. I think. Look, the finale is sort of like it's a really good build. I think. I don't know. I'll be curious to see. Since I didn't watch tonight's episode, I mean, I've seen it a million freaking times, so I don't know what was on the next week on.
Oh yeah,
I
it
didn't
showed like
see it.
Mike looked like he got shot.
Yeah, Mike gets shot. That's it.
that's the show, everybody. That's
I don't
the
know. Once
season.
in a while, they'll show stuff. I'm like, my God, what do you guys just gave away the ending? Like, I don't know. They had
But you can never trust them. You can never trust
yeah,
the
that's
scenes.
true. That's true.
And even if they show you, like, if they showed me Mike getting shot in the head, like, I
you'd be
wouldn't
like,
believe
buy
it.
Yeah.
I'd be like, that's not
I mean, but it's pretty intense, and sort of everything sort of builds up to this point. And I think the ending will probably like I know you're big on predicting. I don't think you'll predict this ending.
I'm glad.
Well, you want to try? Go for it.
I think Sid probably saves somebody's life on the Graceland team.
No,
No.
dead wrong.
No, dead wrong.
no,
All right.
yeah.
Now, I don't know. I was thinking randomly outside the box, but it wouldn't make sense. You know, I
That's
just
good,
kind
though. I
of
like that. That's season 3.
at a time. Oh, season 3, so Sid
Maybe.
survives. Oh, hey.
No, maybe.
So, are there any like stories from set that you just think are hilarious that the fans might want to hear right now,
Wow, stories from set. White Collar or Graceland? Those
or
are
any of
interesting.
them? Because like everybody's watching right now.
That's true.
All eyes on you, Jeff.
all eyes-
No pressure.
Oh, this is always tough. Well, let's see. Stories from set. What are interesting stories? Well, I can tell you one. This is sort of a weird story from set, but it's just because Ross McCullough plays Keller, and I ended up rescuing this dog. That's a good story from set. No, it's kind of funny because we're like where they have the makeup trailers. We're in Flushing, New York. Oh, this is a good story actually. This is a story of Jeff on set, me. So it's the last day. This is kind of funny. So it's the last day, and the way it works in New York or anywhere, if you're around, when we're filming, there's these signs that point to the different shows. Like it'll say Graceland, I have an arrow pointing, stuff like that. So I'm in the back of the car. There was a car service picked me up at the hotel, and they're driving me, and I got my suitcase in the back. It was a big ass suitcase. Story. It was actually Joe Henderson's wedding gift. So Joe, that was going to be your wedding gift, but he pissed me off, and I kept it myself. So it's a true story. It's this nice big green suitcase. So I got this suitcase, and I got it in the car, and I'm not really paying attention. The driver says, "Here we are," and so I get out of the car, and there's the lighting truck and everything. And I'm looking around, and I'm like, okay, where's the set? And there's this big ass junkyard, this huge junkyard, and I'm like, okay. So I'm dragging my suitcase through, and I'm looking for, is Matt Bomer around? Who? They're not, but I'm looking, there's a film crew. I'm like, who? Matt Bomer? No. Sandy Bookstaver, the director? No, we don't know. Turns out my driver dropped me on the wrong show, which was Persons of Interest. So I'm in the worst part of, one of the worst parts of New York, I guess. Flushing is not a good area. So I'm sitting there, and they tell me, I call my people, and they're like, we'll send a PA for you. Can you start walking? So I said, okay. So I'm walking. And apparently I'm going the wrong direction because my iPhone, hasn't updated or whatever. So I'm walking the wrong direction, and I've got my suitcase and stuff. And this guy pulls up next to me, and he looks at me, and I'm like, and he waves, and he gets out of the car, he comes over, starts throwing my suitcase in the back, and I go, "Are you taking me to set?" And he goes, "Where?" And I go, "Are you taking me to set?" And he goes, "What are you talking about?" And I go, "Who are you?" And he goes, "Do you need a ride?" And I'm like, "Who are you?" And he says, "Well, I'll take you wherever you need to go." And I go, "I think I'm waiting for a ride." And he goes, "I won't charge you." And I go, "No, it's cool." So I still don't know to this day who that guy is. So I turn around and start walking the other way.
Shout out to that guy.
Yeah, that guy. You know who you are. So at that point, I'm walking back, and the production coordinator who used to work on White Collar, now works on Person of Interest, walking down, Andrew Sachs goes, "Jeff?" And I goes, "Andrew? What are you doing?" And I said, they dropped me off at the wrong set. He goes, "Oh, okay." So he drove me over to the White Collar set, and it was a nice reunion with everybody. So there's that story.
I was waiting for the dog in that story because you started with.
I started with the dog, but see, I often do that. People who know me know that I can't. I tend to do tangents on my stories. The dog was, they set up the makeup trailer. It was a bad area where we were in, and there's this beautiful dog. There's this what do you call it? There's like this junkyard, another junkyard. All my stories have junkyards in them today. And there's this beautiful big, she looks like I think she's a Rot Doberman mix, really gorgeous. And she's in this junkyard. And as I'm walking over, she jumps up on the fence and she's super friendly. And my wardrobe, my costumer comes out, Karen, and goes, "Do you want her?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? I got a Chihuahua. I don't need a giant 300-pound dog." And she's like, it's 100-pound actually. She goes, "Well, they're going to put her to sleep." I'm like, "What?" She's a year old. She goes, "Yeah, they're going to put her down. They can't keep her." I'm like, "Are you out of your mind?" And they're like, "Well, can you help her?" And I'm like, "God, yes, fine. We'll figure out a way to do this, right?" So Ross McCall, who plays Keller on the show, is a big dog guy too. And I said, "What are we going to do?" And he says, because I was flying back like right away. And he goes, I'll take the dog and I'll put her on a plane and fly her home to you, and then we'll figure it out from there." And I said, "Okay." And so that night, or actually 2 days later, when he's getting ready to go, I fly back home. So I'm in LA and I get a call from Ross. It's midnight my time. It's like 3 a.m. there. He's got a 6 a.m. call. And I'm like, he's in Keller's actually, he's Scottish. So he's like, he's like, "Oh, mate, you got to help me. He's a freaking mess with this dog. Stop it. And you hear this chewing and it's like, no, he's got this 100-pound monster in his room. It's tearing the room up. And apparently he tried to put her in the crate. The kennel. And she's never been inside before. So she freaks out and is ripping apart this hotel room. So I finally get a hold of a PA, and I'm 3,000 miles away trying to help him. So I finally get this PA, pay the guy $500 and say, "Just come out, help him." He comes out, gets the dog, takes her to a vet, tranquilizes her. So she's now been staying for the last almost month now with a trainer in Jersey who's taking care of her. And anyway, I flew out this last weekend to take her back, but screw up with the paperwork, so they're going to fly her back this week. So there you go. Named her Finn for finale because that's where we found her. So,
there you go.
There we go. That's the story. I have no other good stories.
You have no other good stories.
And Bomer exploded and punched Ross McCall in the face. But never mind.
If that was a real story,
no, they got into a shouting match, but it was creative differences. It was kind of awesome.
But did he punch him in the face?
No, he almost did.
Oh, he almost. Okay, dang. Well, that would have
been a great story too.
That would have been a great story. But we got the story about Arnold. We got the story about LA and having your Volkswagen bus being stolen.
Right.
We got a lot of stories.
Yes.
Guys, I really feel like we got to know Jeff Eastin today.
Yeah, there you go.
And I think this was a great time. Great to have you in.
This was fun. Thank you.
I probably went way over my allotted time to have for this interview, but honestly, I had a blast.
Cool.
Thank you so much for coming in, Jeff.
Thank you, man.
Really appreciate it.
It's a real pleasure.
Where can we find you on Twitter? Where can your fans follow your work?
Just Jeff Eastin on Twitter. Just EASTIN. It's not like the bat. Eastin. So Jeff Eastin on Twitter.
Have any other shows coming up?
Don't know yet. I mean, hopefully Knockwood Graceland will be back, and then I don't know. I go pitch Bill McGoldrick, who runs Sci-Fi. Said, "Come in and pitch me something." So I would love to do some dark sci-fi thing. That's my that's my goal anyway.
All right.
I don't know what it's going to be, but boom.
Well, we'll look out for that.
Thanks, man.
Guys, thank you for tuning in. This has been AfterBuzz TV's Creators and Showrunners. I am your host, Stephen Lemieux. You can find me on Twitter at Stephen Lemieux, StephenLemieux. Check me out on the Graceland After Show next Wednesday at 9 Pacific Time. Check me out on the Strain After Show, as well as MasterChef and coming up Sons of Anarchy. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen.
It's been a bless. Thank you.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.
Thank you for watching AfterBuzz TV on YouTube. For more of your favorite after shows and interviews, subscribe to our channel here, and be sure to share your opinion on the episode in the comment section below here. We'd love to see what you guys are buzzing about. Thanks again. Buzz you later.